Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess. I hope you're doing well. Today we are going to be doing my April wrap-up. I read 7 books this month. One of them is not here because it was technically a short story, and one of them is a deceitful liar. I'll take that one out. That was a decoy book who was standing in for a book that I lent out to somebody. I read a lot off my physical TBR this month. I only borrowed one from my library. So some of these books I read in other reading vlogs, or I read them as part of a different video project. I will link those in the description down below, and it'll be in the cards as well. Some of them I go much more in depth on. Some of them I'm gonna talk about more in depth here. So either way, you can go check out those videos and this one, hopefully. I mean, you're currently watching it, so as long as you don't click off right now. So the first book that I read in April is Spread Me by Sarah Gailey. This one I did read for my Bewitch or Ditch episode 3, so you can check that out. This one is a sci-fi horror. It takes place in a remote desert research base following this woman named Kinsey and her team of scientists. At the very start of the story, the team finds a strange creature in the desert and they bring it into their research base. And immediately Kinsey is kind of obsessed with this creature and is kind of thinking about it a lot and feels like it is watching her and throws basically all of their safety protocol out the window to bring this creature into the base. And everything just spirals from there. Obviously, I can't tell you too much more about this because it is short. There's a lot of twists and turns. It's a horror. I don't want to take any of the suspense away. But basically, I'm just gonna say this was a very strange experience. There were so many points while I was reading this that I was just sitting there, jaw dropped, thinking, what the fuck is happening? What is transpiring in these pages right now? The things that happen between Kinsey and the members of her research team and the creature and the other things that are kind of happening throughout this story, it's just wild. It was truly a little bit mind-melting at times, just kind of the things that happen. It's a little bit like Eldritch, it's a little bit Twilight Zone-y at times. I mentioned this in my Bewitch or Ditch video, but there were a lot of reviews that was saying it's The Thing, but extremely horny, and I vouch for that. It's extremely horny. The things that happen in this book, the kind of sexual, is pre-inclination a word? I don't know if it's a word. The sexual fantasies that are happening in Kinsey's head. It's something that you may have never thought about or thought was possible, and it becomes possible, is all I'm gonna say. I had a great time with this. It's definitely not for the faint of heart in terms of, like I said, a little bit of erotic horror. It wasn't super gory or anything like that. It was more a little bit uncomfortable. It was more getting under your skin in a lot of ways, more ways than one. But even with the discomfort that this brings you and the what the fuck moments, I really loved it. I gave it a 4-star, which seems like it's low for how much I'm praising it, but I don't think I could justify giving this a 5. It does slow down at times because it's also revisiting some flashback scenes of the establishing like relationships between Kinsey and her crew. I didn't love the slowdown moments as much because I just wanted to go back into the action, but at the same time I think you needed like a little break in between all the things that were happening. Otherwise it would just be like way too much in too short of a span of time, I think. So I think I'm leaning towards the 4-star. I could argue for a 4.5, but I think 4 stars feels good for this. So that's Spread Me by Sarah Gailey. The next book that I read is Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Ayomide. I tried my best. I listened to like 6 different videos to make sure that I was saying it right. I hope I said it right. This book is a YA thriller, and the best way I can describe this to you is how I think the blurb on Goodreads or some of the comments maybe have said it's basically Gossip Girl meets Get Out, and I would also say a little bit of Pretty Little Liars sprinkled in there. This was exactly what it says on the tin. It is definitely Gossip Girl in the like rich prep school kid drama with all of the mess that comes from wealthy kids doing bullshit that they shouldn't be doing. Add into that the whole like mystery element of A from Pretty Little Liars. I'm not gonna say in terms of the comparison to Get Out because I haven't seen the movie. I've seen a lot of analysis videos about the movie, but I'm just a wimp when it comes to movies with blood or gore or anything, so I don't watch a lot of them. But from what I know about Get Out, I can definitely see the parallels here. So this story is dual POV. It follows 2 characters. One of them is named Devin, and the other is Chiamaka. They are both Black students who are attending this majority white school. Devin is a music student. He is very devoted to his music and his composition that he's working on. And then Chiamaka is basically like the star student, valedictorian, head of committees, and just extremely well-known, kind of the it girl of the school. Very Blair Waldorf vibes from from Gossip Girl. This book is also super gay because both of the main characters are queer in some fashion. So we do have intersectionality here of having characters of color being queer as well, which I do love. The premise behind a lot of the drama that's happening here is basically the two of them are attending school. They're kind of just going about their separate lives in school because they come from very different like popularity groups or like cliques, I suppose. Devin being a music student and then Chiamaka being like the valedictorian it girl. All of a sudden we start having these text messages getting spread around the school from a mysterious person named Aces, and they're spreading a lot of gossip and a lot of really, really bad secrets and rumors about these two characters. And so it kind of is just following, figuring out who Aces is, what do they want, why are they targeting Devin and Chiamaka, etc. I really enjoyed this one. I found the pacing and the tension of the thriller to be very intriguing, and I was thinking about it the whole time as like an episode of Gossip Girl or Pretty Little Liars, so I felt like it was very entrenched in that kind of everyone's out to get you, you don't know who you can trust kind of feeling that those shows have. I also really liked Devin and Chiamaka as characters. Chiamaka starts out a little like iffy because she's kind of like the bitchy it girl, but I really like her characterization throughout, and we get to see more of her soft side and why she's kind of as guarded as she is. Devin as well is a really sweet character, and I hate seeing these things happen to the two of them, but I really enjoyed watching things play out. I enjoyed the queer romances as well that were in here. I enjoyed the thriller aspects of it and the mystery aspects of it. So I did give this one also 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was a good time. And despite being YA and having like a pretty young tone, I still felt fully engaged in it and I really enjoyed it. The next book I don't have with me because I lent it to my mom, and that is Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter by Heather Fawcett. This is the same author as the Encyclopedia of Fairies series. I did talk about this one pretty at length and pretty in depth in a recent reading vlog. I will link it down below. So I'll just kind of talk about the premise and then touch on some of my feelings about it. So this one follows our main character Agnes, who lives in, I think it's 1920s Montreal, 1930s Montreal, one of those. And she runs a cat shelter. However, her cat shelter has been kind of destroyed by a wizard duel. Literally wizards battling in the streets and blowing a hole in the side of her shop. She and her sister Elise are looking for a new location for the cat shelter. They're kind of like looking around the city and they're not really finding a good place, or the places don't want anything to do with them once they hear about the cats that are going to be living there. But they end up finding this kind of hole in the wall, potentially haunted storefront that people have kind of been warning them to stay away from. A lot of weird things happen there. The previous owners just kind of disappear without a trace. But she doesn't really feel like she has a choice because winter's approaching, so she says, fuck it, we're going for it. So they end up moving in. Quickly, they start to notice weird things happening. You come to find out, and this is not a spoiler because it's in the synopsis, which I think the synopsis gives way too much away. There is a wizard living in the basement and running a magic shop, an illegal shop selling artifacts to other wizards. And so she ends up encountering this wizard, Havelock, who is her landlord slash basement dwelling roommate. And he definitely has that kind of air about him as like a charming yet frustrating and infuriating love interest. I really liked him and Agnes. I liked their kind of begrudging alliance that turned into friendship that turned into more than that. Overall, I would say this is pretty low stakes. There's not a whole lot of like intensity happening here, but there is this whole plot line with Havelock's sister who's kind of hunting him down because she wants a particular artifact that she thinks he has, but he doesn't think he has it. So he's like, what the fuck, I don't have this. But so that's where the like high intensity comes in, I suppose, the high stakes. And it does get a lot more high stakes towards the 75% mark. That was something I commented on in my vlog that I was like kind of iffy about. I didn't love the super high stakes part that they introduced towards the end, but I ended up enjoying the payoff and where it went. So it ended up working out for me. I did give this also a 4-star. So far, back to back to back 4-star books, which is a nice feeling. And I liked it enough that I suggested it to my mom. I recommended it to her. I don't know if she started. I hope she likes it. But so that is Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter. The next book I read is also kind of keeping with this witchy magical theme, and that is Witch Hat Atelier Volume 2. This is a manga. Basically, this series follows a young girl who wants to become a witch, but in this universe, people can't just like have magic. You're either born a witch or you're not. And so Coco, being not born a witch, really wishes she was one. She has always been passionate about magic and about learning about it, and one day things kind of happen to put her in a situation where she can learn about magic and she can actually train under a master who has other witches in his training as well at his atelier. It's basically just following her and the master, I can't remember his name, magical adventures and things that she has with the master and the other witches. And I think this is very cute. I'm not going to talk about it much because I don't really know how to talk about manga. There's not a whole lot to say. I feel like this did just come out as an anime. I think I definitely want to watch the anime because, I don't know, something about manga, I'm not really feeling like super compelled to read more. I do have the next 3 volumes of this, and I feel like I should read them, but I don't know, I feel like I don't get as much enjoyment out of manga as I do of like graphic novels, for example. I think it's just because the story is so broken up over so many volumes, it doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere near a complete story from one volume. I know that's kind of the point of manga, is to like keep getting little bits and little bits and little bits for like a long time, but I don't know if that's going to be for me or not. So I may or may not continue with the series, I'm not sure. I did give this one a 3-star. It was okay, I thought it was cute, there were some, good things that happened in here, but I don't really know. I don't know how to talk about it much, The next one I also don't have physically because I borrowed it from my library and I have returned it, and that is Recitatif, I think that's how you say it, by Toni Morrison. This is a short story, it's like 40 pages, so I really cannot tell you like anything significant about it. Basically, it follows 2 young girls who are growing up in, I think, like a group home because their parents are absent or not really involved much in their life, I think. It follows them meeting and then growing up and then them eventually leaving this, I think, group home or something. Oh, I didn't mention this is technically historical fiction as well because it starts in the 1950s, I think. The biggest aspect of this and the reason why it's like so well known, it's very much meant to be an experiment in analyzing race and racial bias. All you know from the synopsis is that one girl is white and one girl is black, and you never get told which one is which. So the whole kind of talking points around this book are which character is white, which character is black, does it matter? How do people come to conclusions on which race each character is? And making the reader analyze their own racial biases or their preconceived racial stereotypes, etc. It's an interesting experiment, and I did take away a lot from it in terms of that kind of analysis portion of it, the introspection that it makes you do. However, I won't say that I enjoyed the experience of reading this. I really found that I wasn't enjoying the story, I wasn't enjoying the characters. Part of that is specifically, I think, some antiquated word choices that really I did not like. For example, the F slur in relation to someone who is gay. There was also just some derogatory terms / potential slurs that were getting thrown around about mentally ill / disabled people, and I didn't really enjoy that either. I know that part of that is it's a product of the times, it's a product of the vocabulary of the times, but I still did not really enjoy that. I also just found the characters to be kind of really unlikable as well, and I don't know if that's intentional or not. Especially them being young and the way that they talk about other characters, the way they describe other girls in this group home setting, especially one character who they kind of turn a blind eye to the bullying of and the harassment of that character. Every dog in this neighborhood is going crazy right now. So we are in the perspective of Twyla, or at least following Twyla throughout this. Roberta is the other girl. Because we're following Twyla, we get to see more of her introspection and the way she unpacks her own biases and her own opinions about other people, and the way that she views her relationship with Roberta. We get to see her development throughout the story as well. I did like her better as a character, but like I really did not like Roberta as a character. I have to remind myself that sometimes unlikable characters are intentionally unlikable, and that doesn't mean that I shouldn't enjoy a story. I just sometimes have a hard time, like even if something is well written, if a character is unlikable and they're the main character, I just have a really hard time being like, I loved this story even though I hated the main character. Do you know what I mean? So like I said, I took a lot out of this, but I still just didn't really enjoy the experience of reading it. I did give it a 3-star, kind of mostly for the way that it made you think, the kind of experimental nature of it. I do want to read an actual Toni Morrison book, like a full book at some point, but I am kind of nervous with how this one was very much a product of the times that her other writing is going to be as well. And I don't know if I can like divorce the use of certain words from the rest of the book. I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm probably being way too sensitive about it. It's just something I noticed, so like it's worth saying. But I would like to read a Toni Morrison. If you have any recommendations for one, that would be a good like beginner to Toni Morrison. I know she has so many works, so let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of hers, what you would suggest. I'm gonna aim to have the vlog where I talk about this one go live before this video goes live, so you should hopefully have that to watch. And that is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amala Motar and Max Gladstone. So this is actually my second time reading it. The first time I read it as an audiobook. This time it ended up being an immersive read situation where I listened to the audiobook and read this at the same time. To explain the synopsis of this one is going to be a little tough because it is a very kind of experimental, abstract story. It's a sci-fi. I was gonna say it's futuristic, but it takes place all over time because this follows 2 agents on opposite sides of a war through time and space. You have one agent who represents a very digital, cyber, dystopian society where everybody is kind of linked through a digital shared consciousness. And then you have the other agent agent who is on the side of Garden with a capital G. I feel like I have less of a grasp of Garden's side of the war in terms of the world building, just because it's so much more like far-fetched or different than like a cyberpunk dystopian kind of society. We've seen that before. We've all seen that before. I don't really know how to describe Garden, to be honest. It's all like a nature connection. The world building doesn't really matter. I know I care so much about world building, and I'm usually like a huge stickler for world building. I'm gonna tell you right now, the world building doesn't really matter in this. That's not the focal point of this story. The focal point is following Red and Blue, who are the agents, as they are writing each other letters through time, hounding each other and hunting each other across time and space, trying to fuck up each other's plans and win the war for their respective sides. Meanwhile, they're leaving like taunting messages for each other every time that they crisscross paths and they mess up each other's plans. And these messages are sent in the most unconventional, impractical ways ever. Like writing sentences on a tree and then revisiting it every 10 years to write another sentence, so that over 100 years you have a full letter. And you can only read the letter when you cut down the tree and look at the rings. And every single time they send a letter, they send it in a different way. And all of the ways are equally wild. So it is definitely, like I said, it's really experimental. It's really abstract. I just love the way these characters interact. I love their individual writing styles and the way that they talk about their sides of the war, the polar opposite worlds that they come from, the way they talk about their innermost desires that they've never voiced to anybody else and they can only voice to their enemy. This book is unlike anything I've ever read, and it still holds up to me like 2 years later after I read it the first time. I still loved it. I gave it a 4.5 star. I did give it a 5 star the first time, but I think that was just kind of like the awe of the whole experience and the mind fuckery of it all. I was just completely blown away by it. And I still was blown away by it this time, and blown away by things that I didn't even remember that happened. I do highly recommend the audiobook for this. I love both of the narrators. They both do a fantastic job. The way they completely embody their characters through their performance, with Red being from this super cyberpunk, dystopian, militaristic society, with her line delivery being a bit more formal, more direct, more to the point, and then with Blue being from Garden, she writes in this kind of whimsical, ephemeral way, but also this kind of brutal way that you can kind of see both sides of that in nature, in Garden. And her character has this like the most sultry voice. The writing and the prose in this is also just so poetic. It is just enrapturing. And even when it doesn't make like a lick of sense, it is still just so wonderful. And it just completely wraps you up in this beautiful love story that happens across time and space and the journey that these two characters go on. So I love this book. Obviously, I'm ranting about it. Unfortunately, the last thing that I read was a little bit of a miss. I also read this one from my most recent episode of Bewitch or Ditch, which was linked earlier, and that is Salt Slow by Julia Armfield. This is a short story collection. It is mostly contemporary horror with a little bit of like speculative sci-fi fantasy horror thrown in. Since it's a short story collection, I can't really tell you much about like the premise of each of these stories. They're all drastically different, obviously. I'm just going to run through the ratings that I gave each of these because some of them I really liked. So I'm just going to go in order of the stories that are in this collection. Mantis, I gave 4 stars. The Great Awake, 2 stars. The Collectibles, 4 stars. Formerly Feral, 3 stars. Stop Your Women's Ears with Wax, 3 stars. Granite, 3 stars. Smack, 3.5 stars. Cassandra After, 4 stars. Salt Slow, 4.5 stars. And overall, when I averaged it out, it was like 3.4, so I rounded down to an overall rating of 3 stars for this collection. So out of all of these, my favorites were Salt Slow, Cassandra After, Mantis, and the Collectibles. And I did write a few of my thoughts down on like little post-it notes while I was going. There was a little bit of like a consistent theme or through line through a lot of these stories that I was kind of picking up on. I wrote for Mantis that it's a visceral examination of the repulsive aspects of being human, being a teenager, being female. Dissects the expectations of female beauty in society and tailoring oneself to the male gaze. Absolutely steeped in the disgusting side of girlhood/womanhood in a way that completely decenters the male gaze. And I could definitely see that applying to a few of the stories in this as well. There's kind of this consistency throughout of like women and girls doing disgusting things or just humans being disgusting. I think it was just an interesting kind of lens to look through a lot of these stories when you start to see that common element. I also wrote about the Collectibles. Very some assembly required, Buffy season 2 episode 2, I support women's wrongs. About Formerly Feral, an interesting look at the feral side of untamed women and how women will bite back. I had some fun writing like some of the notes kind of throughout about my experience with these. At some point I stopped writing down notes because I was like, I'm not really enjoying this collection overall. And like I said, I did enjoy some of them more than others, especially Salt Slow, which I think was the least kind of grounded in reality of all all of them. That one I did really enjoy because it had like post-apocalyptic elements to it, and it had a little bit of like a Lovecraftian horror aspect towards the end. I really liked that one, and I wish that more of the stories were like that. I wish they got a little bit freakier, a little bit less realistic or less grounded in reality, and also a bit more closure on some of these, because some of these were kind of going somewhere and I felt like it was ramping up and then it was left on kind of a inconclusive note. If you don't like inconclusive endings and you want like a solid answer, don't pick this up, because a lot of these stories do not have a concrete answer for what happens. It leaves it a little bit open-ended for you to kind of infer what happens. And in some ways that might be better. Some people might really enjoy that, but I kind of wanted a little bit more closure from some of these stories. So overall, a little bit of a mixed bag to end the month on. And that is everything that I read in April. Overall, I think it was a pretty good reading month. It was like basically a 50-50 split of 4 stars and 3 stars, and then that one 4.5 star, of course, with the reread. Let me know in the comments down below what was your favorite book that you read in April. And if you're not feeling chatty but you want to let me know that you were here, drop the red and blue hearts for This Is How You Lose the Time War. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this, please like, comment, and subscribe. It means a lot to me that you're here, and I will see you in the next one.